Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. On today's show, we got good stuff.
Good stuff, Maynard.
No, not malto meal. Good podcast stuff.
Oh, really?
Would I lie about that?
I see no profit in that.
Anyway, on the show today, we celebrate the date July 25th, 1943. And I think you're gonna love it. What? Also on the show, we have a scary story from Kim. And so, let's begin it all with this 5-minute mystery.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Good Story, Bad Ending. Have you ever watched a movie that you were enjoying only to have it end badly? Then you too have experienced Good Story, Bad Ending. It's a good thing that never happens with the 5-minute mystery, right?
Egypt. Night. Silhouetted against the amber sky stands the cold and foreboding tomb of Prince Fede Ki-Am. At the entrance of the tomb stand the figures that compose the Campbell expedition.
Open, Campbell. Good. Well, gentlemen, are you all ready?
Indeed we are, yes.
Good. Dr. Martin, you go first.
As you wish.
I'm right, Benier.
Right.
Bill Crane.
Yes, sir.
And I'll take up the rear.
Boy, is it dark in here.
What'd you expect in a tomb? Sunlight?
I wonder what would happen if we got lost in here.
You know, Pena, you always manage to come up with the nicest thoughts.
Why are we stopping?
There are 4 passages branching out here.
Oh, that's just fine.
I suppose the only thing that we can do is to each take a passage and see where it leads to. How does that sound?
Sensible to me.
All right. To do it.
All right, Ben. And if you find anything, just shout and we'll all come running.
Boy, it really is dark in here. I wonder where all these passages lead to. Oh, well. Good Lord. What was that?
What happened? Hey, what was that shot?
What's happened?
What was that
Dr.
shot?
Martin, what's happened to Campbell?
Well, he's been shot, I guess. I was exploring that other tunnel when I heard a shot. I came running and found Campbell like this.
But who shot him?
And he must have shot himself.
But his gun is still in his holster.
Yes, he must have tripped on this loose gravel, and the gun went off when he fell.
Well, come on. We can't let him lie here. Help me carry him out.
Well, gentlemen, I've examined him.
And?
I was right. The bullet I took out of his body was fired from Campbell's own gun.
I'm sorry to hear you say that.
Why? What do you mean?
Just that I'm holding you, Dr. Martin, for Campbell's murder.
What single clue led Crane to believe that Dr. Martin killed Campbell? In just a moment, we'll give you the solution. But first...
Okay, what do we have here? Well, we have an excellent story that takes place in a lost tomb. One of the best I've heard on these FMSs. However, no motive again plagues us, and I have to ask the question, how did he shoot himself with his gun in his holster? Let's go find out.
And now, back to our story.
But Campbell wasn't murdered. He shot himself.
That's what you try to make us believe.
What do you mean?
Just this. You said Campbell shot himself when he fell. But his gun was in his holster.
Well,
anyone knows you can't fire a gun until you've drawn back the firing pin. But what you forgot is that no one has the firing pin released when they're carrying a gun in a holster.
But that just proves that Campbell was murdered. It doesn't prove that I killed him.
Oh, yes, it does, Mr. Martin. You just told us that the bullet you removed from Campbell's body was fired from his gun. But that's impossible. Therefore, you switched bullets. An innocent man wouldn't have done that. No, Dr. Martin. That one clue proves that you and you alone murdered Campbell.
Well, that is a really bad ending to a rather good story. Isn't it amazing that here on Ron's Amazing Stories that we have things like this happen? Is it a coincidence? Nah, a good story is a good story, even if it ends badly. So, write that down, and remember, this 5-minute mystery was brought to you by Good Story, Bad Ending. Get yours today.
What's that you say?
Did you know about the brand new Ron's Amazing Stories Amazon Echo skill? To activate the skill on your Echo, simply say, Activate Ron's Amazing Stories. Now there is a catch to this. For right now, you can only use the Echo skill in the United States. I've been told that that's going to change, and you folks in Canada are next to get the new skill. Check back often. Other countries will follow, and of course, I will keep you posted. Ron's Amazing Stories is also an on-air radio show. We are on every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, that's 11 p.m. Eastern. For more information and stations in your area, head to amfm247.com or find the links at ronsamazingstories.com. I received this email from Martin in North Carolina. He writes, I've been listening to your show for a while now, and I love it. I would like to be able to download the show and then listen to it on my Galaxy S8 phone. How can I do that? There has to be a way. Well, thanks for listening, Martin. And oh my yes, there are a number of ways you can do that on your S8 or any Android device for that matter. Simply go to the Google App Store and pick a podcast player. I recommend 2 that will do the job. The first is called the Podcast Source, and the second is PlayAPod. They both allow you to stream and download any podcast. These players are also available for Apple devices on the iTunes App Store. I hope that answers your question, Martin. We have a second email from Kirsten. She sent in this comment. I had to write you about the story sent in by Clarissa. That was podcast 322. I loved it, and I want to thank Clarissa for sharing it. I too am a writer of stories and am planning on sending one to Ron's Amazing Stories. When I heard Clarissa read it, it made me feel like I could do anything. That is a rare feeling for me. You see, I'm a bit of a nerd and have not had the courage to do anything like that. Clarissa, you are my newest hero. Thank you. Well, thank you for your comment, Kirsten. And please do send me your story. If you don't want to read it, that's okay, but we want to hear it. And now, this story from the golden age of radio. I have something pretty special for you today. If you read this week's blog, you already know that we're going to feature Maureen O'Hara. If you aren't familiar, she is one of Hollywood's brightest stars and greatest actresses. She began making movies in 1938 and made her last film in 1991, Only the Lonely with John Candy. Our story comes from the OTR series, Suspense. O'Hara plays a wealthy debutante who helps her detective boyfriend track down a serial killer. The tale is called The White Rose Murders, and it is a story well calculated to keep you in suspense. It first aired, note the date, July 25th, 1943. Here is the creepy man in black to tell you more.
This is the Man in Black, here again to introduce Columbia's program, Suspense. Our star this evening is Miss Maureen O'Hara, whom you've seen rise to stardom in Hollywood within the short space of a year. Her performances in the 20th Century Fox production How Green Was My Valley, then more recently in The Immortal Sergeant, and now currently in the RKO production This Land Is Mine, have given her an enviable place in the ranks of America's new film favorites. Miss O'Hara makes her first appearance on our Suspense stage tonight as the heroine of A Study in Homicidal Mania, The White Rose Murders by Cornell Woolridge, which is tonight's tale of suspense. If you have been with us before, you will know that suspense is compounded of mystery and suspicion and dangerous adventure. In this series are tales calculated to intrigue you, to stir your nerves, to offer you a precarious situation and then withhold the solution until the last possible moment. And so it is with The White Rose Murders and the performance of Maureen O'Hara. We again hope to keep you in suspense. He stood there waiting. He knew that presently they would come out of the second-rate dance hall, out into the dimly lit street. He listened a while and smiled as the orchestra played that tune inside. And then they came out, the two girls, and still he waited, close enough to hear what they were saying.
Well, I'll see you at the office tomorrow, Sally.
Oh, I don't know how I'll get up. It's after 1 o'clock. 6 hours sleep. Oh, I'll be dead tomorrow.
Me too. Oh, gosh, I gotta have at least 8 hours or I'm no good at all.
I wish I had someone to walk me to the bus. It's 4 long blocks.
I'll walk you down, Sally.
Oh, don't bother. We go in different directions.
It's no trouble. Really, I don't mind.
Well, really, it's not necessary.
In the narrow alley that divides the dance hall from an ugly office building, he stood smiling. Just a little inside the alley, he stood stiffly against the wall, his head back, eyes closed, arms straight down, and in his left hand, a white rose.
Well, all right then, Sally. Good night.
Good night, Joan. See you in the morning. Dum, da, 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 dum. Da, 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 dum. Oh, I hope I don't have to wait long for the bus. Who are you? Keep away. Keep away from me. Let me go. Let me go.
The girl is dead. Tenderly, the figure straightens her hair and gently places the limp body on the ground. Then he opens her clenched fist, and carefully, so that the thorns will not bruise her flesh, he places in her hand the white rosebud.
Pardon me, my good man. Is it true that you are the famous detective Terence Riley?
Huh? Oh, Jenny, I didn't see you come in.
Well, now that I'm here, how about offering to buy a cup of coffee for the girl you're going to marry? If you can ever get up enough nerve to ask her.
Oh, it's no use, Jenny. I guess we better call it quits. I'm just a dick on the homicide squad, and that's all I'll ever be.
And I'm a rich debutante.
We don't belong together.
Oh, you've been reading too many of those romantic stories, Terry. What is it this time? What's wrong?
Yeah, they call him the White Rose Killer. He's got to be caught. There's a general demotion coming on if he isn't, and that's all I need to get back into uniform.
Oh, don't worry, darling. You always look good in blue.
Yeah. Just to match the way I feel.
Tell me more about the White Rose Killer. What's he like?
That's the stumble. He could be anybody. No one's ever seen him except the dead, and they don't talk about it afterwards. Just slips out of the shadows and kills and then slips back again.
How many has he murdered?
4. He's not through yet. It's going to be one of those chain things if he's allowed to keep on.
Are you sure it's always the same one?
Yeah, that part of it we're sure of. It's the same touch, the same way of operating every time.
How do you know that?
Well, it's a rose. A white rosebud. A death rose. Puts it into each victim's hand after he kills her.
Her?
Yep. It's always a woman. A young woman between 19 and 23.
What's behind it? Do you have any idea?
Well, I'm not sure. But here's what I figured out. You know what a rose stands for. Symbolically, I mean.
Why, yes, it's the flower of love. The white rose, the bud, has another meaning. Purity, loyalty, devotion, and especially it stands for a young girl.
Well, that's right. And that's about the way I see it.
So maybe it's a double cross, committed against our murderer by some young girl whom he worshipped and who betrayed his faith in her.
You ought to be a detective, not me.
Thanks, darling. I've got a very fine teacher.
Sweet. There's another thing. The murders were all committed near places where there was music, dance halls and cabarets and the like. There's a song that brings back the original shock that, gives him the final push over into the darkness. As far as we can figure out, it's the beer barrel polka.
Well, how does he commit the murder? Is it always the same way?
Always. Strangulation between the hands, with the thumb into the windpipe to keep his victims from crying out.
But isn't there anything else you know about him?
No, that's why it's so hopeless. He's insane, of course. But there's only this one phase to his insanity. Probably perfectly normal in appearance and behavior. You could pass him on the street and even know it. Well, it's only when he sees someone vaguely like the girl he loved and hears that song that the one defective wire in him is jangled and short circuit.
But, Terry, the flowers, don't the flowers tell you? He must get them somewhere you could trace.
Well, we don't know where he gets them. Maybe he steals them or...
Terry, what if you were the one to get him?
Well, it would mean a citation and a promotion.
And then all the things that stand between us would disappear? We could get married?
Well, the chances would be a lot better anyway. But what chance have I? Everyone in the department has been working their heads off for weeks and they've all failed.
Terry, what were the girls like? The ones he killed?
Well, as I told you, they were all between 19 and 23. Their heights were pretty much the same, too. They're all tall girls, around 5 feet 6 or 7. A little taller than you. And all dark-haired.
How did they wear their hair?
Why, they... Say, what is this?
Oh, nothing, darling. Just interested. How did they wear their hair?
Well, from what I remember, they wore it sort of loose and curly down the back.
I suppose each one had a resemblance to that long-dead love of his.
That's probably it. Well, anyway, that's how the record stands. And we're all waiting for it to happen again.
I see. Terry, I'd like to go home now.
I shouldn't have told you all that stuff. I've given you the creeps.
Oh, come on, Terry. Take me home.
Later, Jenny stands by the window in her room, looking out, thinking. She doesn't move for a long time. Then suddenly, quickly, she goes to her closet and begins to rummage through her many pairs of shoes. Carefully, she picks one pair with 3-inch heels.
5'6" or 7.
Then she walks quickly to the dresser, opens a drawer, takes out a comb and starts redoing her hair.
One loose and curly down the back. Well, here we go. Edward!
Yes, miss?
Is the car ready?
Yes, Miss Virginia. I've been waiting for you.
Let's go before Mother sees me.
Your mother's been looking for you, miss.
I hope you didn't tell her.
No, Miss Virginia, I didn't.
Good. Come on, Edward.
Where do you wish to go, Miss Virginia?
The Starlight Dance Hall on Grove and 2nd Street.
The Starlight, miss?
Yes, Edwards, that's the place.
I wouldn't go there unescorted if I were you, miss. It's one of the worst places in the city. Has a very bad reputation.
The Starlight Dance Hall, Edwards.
Very good, miss. Very good.
Jenny walks slowly around the low-lighted dance hall, trying to make herself conspicuous. A tall figure leaning against a pillar watches her intently as he idly smokes a cigarette. He doesn't seem to belong there. His clothes don't have the nattiness of a dance lover. Jenny pauses not far from him. Deliberately, he throws his cigarette on the floor. steps on it and slowly walks over to her.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
You're not with anyone, are you?
Oh, no, I'm alone.
I thought so. I've been watching you all the time.
Have you?
I haven't seen you dance yet.
I don't know anyone here.
How about dancing with me, then?
All right.
Come on. Let's go out on the floor.
Do you come here often?
No. I never go to the same place twice.
You don't? Why?
I'm always looking for new faces. I'm restless.
Do you find the faces you're looking for?
Listen. Listen to that song. I like that. I like it very much.
Yes, it is a nice song.
You know, you remind me of someone I used to know. I'm trying to think who.
I do?
Yeah. You mind if we stop dancing and go over and get a drink?
No, let's go.
Oh, look. They sell flowers here.
Yes, I see.
I'll get you some. What kind would you like?
Oh, any kind. You pick it out.
All right. Let's see. There's something kind of innocent and young about you. Different from most of the girls that come here.
Can't we stay here a little longer?
It's intermission now. They won't play again for 10 minutes. Come on.
But I like it here. Let's stay a little while longer.
Well, then let's go down for some air. We can come back in a few minutes. Come on.
But...
We'll be back before the music starts.
Oh, you're hurting my arms.
Am I? I'm sorry. Fresh air smells good, doesn't it?
It's so dark here. Let's go back.
You're not scared, are you?
Oh, no, it's
Let's walk
just
down this alley and back.
Please.
No, you
Let me
don't.
go. Oh!
Thanks. That's a lovely necklace, beautiful.
Why, you're just a cheap...
Shut up.
All you wanted was my necklace.
So long, beautiful.
Look out.
What's the matter?
Behind you, look.
Holy... She's dead. A girl. Murdered.
With a white rosebud in her hand.
Well, Jenny, happened again last night. Just like the other times. The girl strangled in an alley and a white rose in her hand.
Any news of the killer?
No. He might just as well float through the air for all the trace he leaves.
He must have bought the flower upstairs in the dance hall. He must have been there earlier, bought it, and saved it until...
No, there was only one rose sold up there all night. And to a man who had a different girl with him. We had the flower girl at... How did you know that they sold flowers there? I didn't tell you.
Well, I must have read it somewhere.
You couldn't have. Wasn't in any of the papers. No details were given, just the statement that an unidentified body was found.
Well, I just imagined that they'd sell flowers in a place like that.
Well, I'm glad you don't go near those dance halls. Why, with this nut running around loose...
Don't bother about that. We'd better catch this killer. And fast.
Where do you get this we stuff? To hear you talk, you'd think that you were on the case, too.
Wouldn't you think so? To hear me talk?
Again, Jenny tours the low dives, hunting for the White Rose Killer. Her search carries her to the waterfront. And as she walks past each dingy bar, she listens to the jukebox music. A little after midnight, she passes a dirty windowed saloon. The thin music catches her ear. She pauses and listens, her eyes alive for some sign, some indication of the person she's looking for. Then suddenly her body becomes rigid, as her eyes fall upon a figure huddled in the shadows.
Someone's watching me.
Slowly, she starts to walk up the street. Behind her, the heavy tread of a man's footsteps keep pace with hers. It's a quiet tread, unhurried but deliberate. For several blocks, it keeps the exact distance. Jenny starts to walk faster.
I've got to know if he's really following me.
The man quickens his pace. Jenny starts across the street. The man follows. She's sure now, sure that the man is following her. She fumbles for something in her purse. Her hand closes around a gun.
If he tries anything, I'll shoot.
You in any trouble, lady?
Oh, no, officer. It's all right. You scared him away.
Scared who away?
Oh, just a man who wanted to bring me flowers. That's all.
Well, he brought you one anyhow, lady.
What do you mean?
Right there on the ground, right by your feet. A white rose.
Coffee, Mabel.
Sure, coming right up. Here you are.
Terry.
Hello, Jenny. Sit down.
Thank you.
Say, what's the matter with you?
Look, darling, read the gossip column in this paper.
What daughter of a socially prominent family is that way about a detective and waits for him outside the station house in her limousine every night? Private chauffeur and all. But Mama says no. That's not so funny.
Oh, they held a big family war council over me just now. Indian powwow, feathered headdress and everything.
They did, huh? Well, what'd they decide?
Oh, I was asked to give my word that I wouldn't see you anymore. I refused, of course, so I'm to be exiled.
Where to?
Our summer home. It's just a few hours out of town, but I'll be there all by myself. Just with Mrs. Crosby, the housekeeper.
Oh, maybe they're right. Why don't you listen to them?
Are you on their side, too?
No. When are you leaving?
Right away. Edwards is driving me out. I just slipped out to let you know. Here's the address and phone number of the place in case you want to reach me. Don't lose it.
I won't.
Well, what's new and exciting about the White Rose Killer?
Our famous lover of flowers? We're still trying to track him down. I suppose I'll go looking for him at the flower show that's just opened.
Oh, a flower show just opened?
Yeah.
Well, goodbye now. I'll be seeing you. What floor is the flower show, please?
3rd floor, miss.
3, please.
Third floor.
Where's the rose display, please?
To your left, over there. See where the man in the gray coat is?
In the gray coat? Oh, yes, thank you. They are lovely, aren't they?
Oh, you startled me.
I'm sorry. I was just admiring the roses.
Oh, yes, the nicest flowers here. I just can't keep my eyes off them.
Yes, you can feel that way about some flowers.
Well, that's the way I feel about white roses.
Have you been here long?
I really don't know. I suppose so. You see, I've come here every day since the show opened. I like to be near the roses, the white roses.
Those big ones are nice.
No, I like the little ones best, the little tightly curled rosebuds. They're so little and innocent. Oh, well, I really better be going. Are you going down?
Yes.
Down, please.
Here, miss, I took a rose for you.
Thank you. It's lovely.
Would you care to have a drink with me?
Why, yes, thank you.
I know of a little place a block or two down there. They have nice music. We'll go there.
All right, whatever you say.
This is it.
Where's the music?
A nickel in the jukebox does it. Any special song you'd like?
No, go ahead and pick one.
Okay. There we are. Oh, that's my favorite song. Reminds me of a girl I used to know.
Excuse me, I want to powder my nose. I'll be right back. Do you mind?
No, of course not.
Seventh Police Precinct. Sergeant Thomas speaking.
Hello, is Terry Riley there?
Just a moment, I'll see.
Please hurry, it's important.
No, sorry, miss. Terry Riley's not here just now.
Will you tell him that I can't keep that date with him. Goodbye.
Do you always go to the phone booth when you want to powder your nose?
Why, I had to make a call.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm afraid I'll have to leave you.
Oh, wait, let me come with you.
I'm sorry, miss, but I've got other things to do.
Oh.
What's the matter?
That car, someone that knows me. Let's get away from here.
That's just what I'm going to do. So long, lady.
Wait, please don't go.
Miss Virginia. Miss Virginia. I'm sorry, Miss Virginia, but I must speak to you for a minute.
Oh, Edwards, what do you want?
I'm sorry, miss. You'd better come with me at once. I've been looking for you everywhere. Your mother's been taken seriously ill.
Mother? Where is she?
She's out at the country place, miss. I drove her there shortly before dinner. She wanted to pay you a surprise visit.
Oh.
I believe the shock of not finding you there upset her, miss.
Is she very bad?
She had the doctor with her when I left. Mrs. Crosby has gone away for the day. Your mother needs you, miss.
Well, let's go. Hurry, Edwards, please.
Right, miss.
Where is Mother, Edwards?
In her room, miss. You'd better hurry.
Mother? Mother? It's Ginny. Is the doctor in there with you? Mother? Why, there's no one here. The room's empty. The bed hasn't been touched. Edwards, what are you doing?
Merely playing a song, miss. A favorite of mine.
A favorite?
Yes, Miss Virginia.
Where's Mother?
She's in the city, miss.
You lied to me.
I'm afraid I did, Miss Virginia.
Why are you locking the door?
You know why, Miss Virginia.
It can't be. You're not the
White Rose killer. But you see, I am, Miss Virginia. Driving you and your family around day after day. Sitting there right in front of you all the time. It was amusing to watch you hunting for me. Hunting for someone you saw several times a day.
It can't be. You're not insane.
Of course not. Who said I was?
Edwards, you know I'm not the girl who betrayed you.
Yes, I know that.
Well, then unlock the door and let me out. Please, Edwards.
I've killed 5 times. I've never regretted it. I'm going to kill you, Miss Virginia.
Why, Edwards? Why?
Because you've been so clever. Too clever. You made yourself look like her, the girl who deceived me. I could have killed you the day you first went out looking for me, but I had to be careful.
Oh.
I almost caught you that night at the waterfront, the night I dropped the White Rose when that police car came.
Edwards, I've never done you any harm.
Your sweetheart, Terry. He loves you, doesn't he?
Yes.
That's good. Because now you won't be able to deceive him like my girl deceived me.
Keep away, Edwards. Keep away or I'll...
You thought you'd use your gun, eh? Well, don't think I was fool enough to overlook that. I took your gun out of your purse.
It won't do you any good to kill me, Edwards. I didn't have anything to do with...
No, and you're not going to have a chance to break another man's heart like she broke mine.
Jenny, where are you?
Terry!
It won't do you any good to call to him. He can't get in here without breaking down the door.
Keep away from me. Terry!
It'll be too late then, because I'm going to kill you now.
Jenny, where are you?
Terry!
Just let me get my hands on that pretty white throat.
Oh, keep away. Keep away from me. Terry! Stop!
Jenny, are you all right?
Yes, Terry, I'm all right.
Oh, take it easy. Here, sit down.
Oh, Terry, I was so scared. There was nobody here but Edwards and I. How did you know where I was?
Oh, it was simple. You were supposed to meet me at the coffee shop. You never broke an appointment, and when you didn't show up, I called the number you gave me. You told me the housekeeper was here all the time, and when there was no answer, I got suspicious and came down. Besides, when I got a message down at headquarters that you had to break a date with me, I knew something was wrong. Are you sure you're all right?
Yes, I'm... Terry, look. On the floor beside Edwards.
A white rose. Must have fallen out of his pocket.
That was meant for me. Oh, Terry, it's all crushed.
Yeah. Crushed and dead.
Just like the white rose killer.
And so closes The White Rose Murders, starring Maureen O'Hara. Tonight's tale of Suspense. This is your narrator, the Man in Black, who, speaking for Columbia, hopes you have enjoyed Miss O'Hara's performance and our play. Next week, because of a special broadcast of the All-Star baseball game, Suspense will not be heard. But again the following week, we will be back with another play on this series and more of your Hollywood favorites. The producer of these broadcasts is William Spear, who, with Ted Bliss, the director, Bernard Herrmann and Lucienne Marowik, conductor and composer, and Cornell Woolrich, the author, collaborated on tonight's Suspense.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Other than how creepy the Man in Black sounded in that one, I loved this story. It was way ahead of its time for a murder mystery. Long before Criminal Minds, we have this gem that looks at the serial killer. My favorite line from the show was this: "No one has ever seen him except the dead, and they don't talk about it afterwards." Pretty good line. I do think it fell down a bit on the ending, but that's probably just my opinion. The episode had a very modern feel to it. A crucial element of most serial killers is the basis upon which victims are chosen, what factors unite them, and working this out is usually the key to the killer's capture. They are typically, therefore, exercises in psychological puzzle solving. In the case of this story, I think what stood out was the discussion and discovery of the killer's motive. Pretty forward thinking for an episode of Suspense made in 1943. Amazing. And now, this moment in time. The date is July 25th, 1943, and this is A Moment in Time. Does the date sound familiar to you? It should. It's the same date that the Suspense story you just heard aired. I thought it might be fun to listen to a segment of World News Today from that very same day. So not only do you get to eavesdrop on what they listen to for entertainment, you also get to hear what the news was for that day. So please enjoy this moment in time.
World News Today, brought to you by Continental Radio and Television Corporation, makers of Admiral Radio, America's smart set. By shortwave broadcast, direct from important overseas stations, as well as the leading news centers of our own country, CBS correspondents are waiting to bring you a complete report from the world's political and battlefronts. But first, here's Doug Edwards.
The top news today, Allied air action. British and American planes have showered tons of bombs on enemy targets in Western Europe, in the Mediterranean, in the South Pacific, and in China. The RAF put on the biggest show with a record attack on Hamburg. Other Allied bombers flying the shuttle route from Britain to Africa blasted Italy's northwest coastal port of Leghorn. On land, the Sicilian campaign has reached its final stages with the capture of Trapani by the American 7th Army. And in Russia, the Soviet tide rolls on toward Orel. More news in just a moment, but first here's Warren Sweeney with a word from Admiral Radio.
3,000 ships, a tremendous air armada, countless men, mountains of supplies and equipment. That was the invasion force which landed on the shores of Sicily. A giant, moving with the precision of clockwork. And on a schedule so rapid, time did not permit the careful handling of delicate radios. Radios used in the invasion had to be able to take it. The rough treatment, the water, the sand. Yes, and take it in such a way that signals would be heard despite the roar of guns and motors, the clatter of half-tracks and tanks, the hoarse shouts of men. Admiral had full confidence Army and Navy radios would come through with flying colors, because in building such radios, tests were developed to duplicate actual battle conditions, and every radio Admiral produces for the armed services undergoes these tests, functions perfectly during and after them. Scientists and radio experts of the Army Signal Corps, Navy Communications, together with Admiral engineers, have condensed years of research into the space of a few months in learning how such radios should be built. Their work has been short of amazing. Today, America's armed forces have radios which do get the message through anytime, anywhere. Their work will have an important bearing upon the future, too. The Admiral you buy after the war will be better, more dependable than ever because of what Admiral has learned in building radios that withstand the rough treatment and hazards of invasion. Now, here once again for Admiral Radio is Doug Edwards.
Allied planes based in Britain are in full action again. Last night, the RAF made the heaviest raid of the war on Germany. For this news and other developments, Admiral Radio takes you to CBS London. Edward R. Murrow reporting.
This is London. A few days ago, the Germans were predicting that their submarines would soon be at sea again, equipped with new technical devices. Last night, the Royal Air Force went to Hamburg, Germany's largest port and main center of their submarine building industry. The British bombers dropped more than 2,300 tons of bombs. It was the greatest weight of bombs ever dropped in any raid. Their losses were the smallest for any recent big-scale attack. 12 bombers failed to return. Details of the raid have not yet come in, but preliminary reports indicate that results were good. And it's safe to assume that many of the submarines with their new technical devices will not put to sea. The bombs went down at the rate of 50 tons a minute. That means that as many tons of bomb hit Hamburg in 10 minutes as ever struck London in an all-night raid. The whole raid lasted only 50 minutes. And in that time, the weight of bombs was equal to 5 of the heaviest all-night raids ever carried out against this city. The raids here were bad enough. But last night's bombardment of Hamburg was something never before experienced by the people of any city. Yesterday's record raid by American bombers against Norwegian targets is still being discussed. Mr. Peter Field, the correspondent of the Sunday Times, who has in the past been somewhat critical of precision daylight bombing, writes about our bomber policy today. He has spent several weeks living and flying with our fortress crews, flying practice missions and on operations against the enemy. In his own words, he was greatly impressed. Mr. Maysfield has high praise for the accuracy of our bombing, the adequacy of defense against fighters, and the ability of the fortresses to evade anti-aircraft fire. He is lavish in his praise of the efficiency and enthusiasm of the crews and the way they got on with the men of the RAF. Mr. Maysfield concludes that a formation of about 100 fortresses can penetrate enemy territory for 200 or 300 miles, drop 250 tons of bombs on an individual target, such as a factory, blot it out completely, without any but superficial damage to the surrounding areas.
American flyers in China have given Jap raiders another licking. For this news and a summary of developments on the home front, Admiral Radio takes you now to CBS Washington. Lee White reporting.
The Navy has released no further news of the Aleutians or the South Pacific. An Army communique from Chungking, however, reports that on Friday, 160 Japanese bombers and fighters attempted unsuccessfully to bomb the two advanced airdromes of General Chennault's 14th American Air Force. P-40s, greatly outnumbered, intercepted the enemy planes and forced most of them to jettison their bombs before reaching their targets. Those which reached their targets were unable to bomb our installations effectively. 10 Zero fighters and 6 Mitsubishi bombers were shot down. 12 more fighters and 7 more bombers were probably destroyed. One of our own planes was destroyed on the ground, and several more were damaged, but all our pilots are reported safe. It was the enemy's biggest air raid ever carried out against American installations in China, and one of the least successful. Vice President Wallace has journeyed to Detroit to deliver a speech this afternoon to local civic and labor organizations. It will be broadcast nationally by radio at 4:30 o'clock. In it, the Vice President will outline a program of mobilization for peace. The President himself is contemplating another fireside chat, the first in almost a year. Though White House sources indicate that it will take the form of a general report on the progress of the war, it will also deal specifically with a new program to combat inflation here at home. Last week, the President said he had been working on a new plan to present to Congress when it reconvenes in September. He said it hadn't been worked out thoroughly yet, but hinted that it would involve the expenditure of money, though not in the form of subsidies. The best guess in Washington is that it will involve the outright government purchase of scarce foods and the resale of such foods to the public at a loss, which, of course, will have to be made good in the form of taxes later on. That the administration is planning a drive to enlist public support for some such program is indicated by a new bulletin of the Office of War Information, which develops the thesis that failure to curb inflation during the last World War was largely responsible for the economic upheavals which followed. The OWI report is based on an independent study made by Wayne Taylor, Under Secretary of Commerce. I return you now to New York and Doug Edwards.
Allied airmen are hitting the European continent from all sides. For a discussion of the problems this creates for the Germans, here is Columbia's military analyst, Major George Fielding Elliott.
While the Allied armies closed the Sicilian trap on the still fighting remnants of the Axis forces on that island, Allied air power striking hard at widely separated points on the outer perimeter of Germany's huge defensive area. Yesterday's dispatches told us about a powerful Allied air raid on the island of Crete, which guards the entrance to the Aegean Sea. Crete has been converted into a strong fortress by the Germans, who are not depending on Italians to hold this key position. They've got their own people in there, and they've got it very strongly fortified. Today we learn of an American raid on Norway, in which the naval base at Trondheim and an aluminum factory near Oslo were the targets. And there was a shuttle raid on the Italian seaport of Leghorn, the great naval base of La Spezia, and finally the huge 2,300-ton raid on Hamburg. Meanwhile, on the Russian front, the Germans are making desperate efforts to gain air superiority in the Orel sector, and are said to have thrown in much of their air reserve for the purpose. The difficulties under which the German High Command must labor to meet the conditions imposed upon them by these all-round air attacks can better be imagined than described. But I'll have a shot at it. In the first place, the Germans must not only retain a great part of their fighter force to protect the industrial areas of Western Germany against our bombs, but they must also somehow contrive to increase their fighter strength in this part of the world, because the scale of our attacks is rising very rapidly. Only after they've done this can they then allocate any air power for other purposes, especially fighters. Their bombers on the Russian front must undergo heavy losses because of insufficient fighter protection, while it is impossible to give German troops and supply depots adequate fighter cover against the Russian bombers. Yet failure in this respect might mean the loss of Orel, might conceivably, at some future time, mean the collapse of the whole front. Under such conditions, it's understandable that outposts like Norway have to suffer, and also that the Germans can't give proper air support to their garrison on Sicily, because if they did that, they'd have to send air forces in driblets to bases well within the reach of overwhelming Allied air power, which would mean they'd lose heavily without accomplishing anything. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe must still long-range fighters to protect their U-boats in the Bay of Biscay, others for the defense of Crete and other outposts, and something must be kept in hand in case of surprise.
Add to this the fact that the Italian Air Force has just about folded up, and we begin to see the reason for the headaches from which the German high commanders suffer.
That was Major George Fielding Elliott. And now, once again, here is Warren Sweeney with a word from our sponsor.
The post-war products of American industry will be far superior to anything we know today. These are promises which can be kept because science, driven by the necessity of meeting wartime needs, has advanced at a rate far beyond its normal speed. Admiral is turning out equipment for war now which could not possibly have been built 2 years ago. Radio communications equipment, unaffected by heat, cold, humidity, clouds of dust and dirt. Radios that endure the jolts and crashing of trucks and tanks. Other industries have advanced too, many of them closely related to radio. Wood can be impregnated until it will neither scratch nor chip. New ways have been found for using metals. More durable glass is now being manufactured. Synthetic rubber and plastics are common, cheap, and practical. When Admiral builds a new radio for your home after the war, Admiral designers will take advantage of all advances made by science, those of allied industries as well as those made by radio science itself. For Admiral is determined that your post-war radio will be the finest radio you ever owned, America's Smart Set. Do you want the cost of living to become higher? Whether it does or not is up to you and every other American. Today, the supply of most luxuries as well as many necessities is limited. If everybody with extra dollars to spend goes on a buying spree, prices will skyrocket just like at an auction sale. So buy only what you absolutely need and put your extra dollars into war bonds. Remember, the family that gets along on less now will have more later. More when all necessities and real luxuries are freely obtainable at reasonable prices. World News Today is brought to you each Sunday at this hour by Continental Radio and Television Corporation, makers of Admiral Radio, America's Smart Set. Be sure to listen again next Sunday when Admiral brings you World News Today by shortwave, direct from the leading news centers of the world. This is Warren Sweeney speaking for Admiral Radio. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
The WBBM Air Theater, Wrigley Building, Chicago.
It was CBS News that created World News Today. It produced a number of excellent news specials and regular broadcasts of the legendary history of the CBS Radio News Bureau. The golden age of radio reported some of the most significant news events of the 20th century, and CBS was a major player during this era. Hundreds of these reports still exist today and can be found on the Internet Archive. Go give it a try. You will be amazed what you find there.
As read by. Amazing stories read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have a story sent in by Kim. It was sent to the main website, and Kim left no information as to where she was from, and the email address she left was totally bogus. I decided to read her email anyway. It's kind of cool, and after all, it was addressed to Ron's Amazing Stories. Kim writes, I wanted to say how much me and my friends love your podcast. We all agree that it connects us with the past, and yet it still seems current. How you do that is amazing. I have a story to tell that you probably won't believe, but it's true, and I hope you use it on your show. I've never lived in a haunted house, but my mother did as a teen. Other houses on her street had strange goings-on, too. A few homes away, there lived a man and his family. One night, one of his daughters went to bed with a bad headache. The next day, she had passed away from an aneurysm. After the funeral, the family went away to get their minds off the tragedy and asked my uncle to check on their pets. My mom and dad, they were dating then, went with my uncle to take care of the house. My mother had heard that there was a grand piano there and she wanted to play it. My dad was studying to be a veterinarian, so he thought he could be useful. After entering the house, My uncle and father headed into the basement to see to the animals, and my mother went straight to the piano on the ground floor. She was playing it when she felt something brush against her ankles. She thought that a cat must have left the basement and walked past her. She kept playing, and then she felt it again. She looked under the piano and saw nothing. When she started up again, she felt hands clasp her legs and grab them tightly. She pulled away, dashed to the basement door, called my uncle, and waited for them. When they all got outside, my uncle could tell that my mom was rattled and asked her what was wrong. She told them what happened, and then he turned white. Later, when the group got home, my uncle told them that he knew the family very well. The daughter who had passed away liked to play a game with her father. When he would sit down to play the piano, she would crawl underneath, grab his ankles, and push his feet up and down on the pedals. This email was simply signed, Kim. Kim, that is a freaky story. I wish I knew more about where you lived and where all this happened. The email you left came back as undeliverable. I would love to have you contact me again and give me the right address. I'm working on a book of stories, and I would love to include this one in there, but I need your permission to do that. To the listeners, I say, if you want your story on Ron's Amazing Stories, simply head to ronsamazingstories.com. Then click on the Contact tab and leave your story. It's that simple. By the way, make sure you leave your correct email address, or I may not be able to use your story at all. Well, I have to say a big thank you to Maureen O'Hara, July 25th, 1943, and of course to Kim. You helped make a pretty good show. Next time on the podcast, science fiction is going to be the theme. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, it's pretty easy to do. Just head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you're going to find all of the links you need. We are on Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many other services. Pick one, and please do leave some feedback about the show. It really does help us to grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.